A lot of people want to make that move to development, and we've spoken many times on why you should do that. But what about when? When should you make that jump to development? When should you start looking at bigger deals? When are you ready? And I think a lot of the time in the property space, especially as an entrepreneur, you're always going to have an element of just winging it. And that's completely fine. You get the education you need, you learn the basics, you have the foundations, and then you just get to piece little bits together as you go through it. You're never going to know everything about everything anyway. I mean, how would you be able to memorize the entire CDM manual, for example? You're going to get in a specific consultant. But when are you ready to make that jump? Now, a lot of this does come down to who you are and how quickly you can piece things together, but I would say as a bare minimum, make sure you've done at least one flip or one buy, refurb, refinance. And ideally, something like an HMO as well, where you've got a little bit of regulation to contend with. The thing is, developments are just big buy, refurb, refinance. In fact, when we're valuing our sites with 20, 30 houses on, whether they be in London or Scotland or anywhere else, the first place we look is our Rightmove comparables. The same way you would with a little 2-bed terrace. The same way you would if you were looking at a rental property for a standard buy-to-let. So everything you do in development is built upon the foundations of your residential investment deals that you're already familiar with. So when you're getting your education for this and you're looking at doing developments, starting small is the right way to go. And I don't just mean a small development, I mean a small deal, period. Just do yourself a flip first. Get used to managing refurbs, get used to talking with builders, get used to refinancing and selling, get used to using things like bridging finance, get used to being able to tenant stuff and contend with the regulation for things like HMO compliance, and if you're doing serviced accommodation, the different bits you're gonna need there to physically deliver a usable property that stays rented, that guests look after, that you're able to manage and track and deal with security issues and all that. The thing is, moving into development, there's just a lot of more pieces of the puzzle. So if you're already super familiar with all of the foundations, you're familiar with dealing with regulation, and you're familiar with dealing with refurbs, that step into development then is actually a lot easier. So yes, you need to learn about planning. Yes, you need to learn about things like sills and Section 106 and CDM regulation, but you're not then also having to learn, how do I manage a refurb? How do I calculate the value of a site? How do I know how much to pay a vendor? Because a lot of this is just the same as a smaller deal, but with bigger numbers. Now, some people want to do 100, 200 deals and have a massive portfolio and be financially free and everything before you move into development, and that's fine. And this is where it comes down to who you are. Are you the kind of person who learns quick, who wants to scale fast, they want to accelerate their journey? Or are you the kind of person who wants to take it a little bit slow, enjoy every step of the process, get comfortable and have a reliable income stream before you move forwards? There's no right or wrong answer to that. It just depends on who you are. And of course, with development, always be looking to joint venture. So if you've never joint ventured before, you're gonna wanna make sure you've done that on a smaller deal first, where the risks are a little bit lower and the money on the table is smaller, before moving to a development deal where you're potentially gonna have 7 or 8 figures on the line. You know, it's a lot easier to pitch a joint venture to someone if you've done it before, because you understand the process. And the bottom line is, when people are buying from you, they need to know that you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna have a hard time pitching. If you've done it before, you're gonna remember all the steps. A lot of people will have been on training courses. You would have sat there, you've learned the basics, how to calculate rent, how to value your house, how to find a property. All that kind of stuff still works. But when you physically get into a deal and you decide, right, this is a deal I want to go ahead with, and you start buying it and you start going through the refurb and everything else, you learn so much more about what is going on when you're physically doing it. So I would say, if you want to get into development, make sure before you make that jump, you have a bit of a basic understanding about how all the different deals work, but that you've physically done a deal, and ideally something with a refurb, ideally something with some form of compliance you have to contend with, and then making that move up is super easy. And of course, don't forget about your financing, your bridging finance, your joint ventures. Make sure either you or someone you're working with knows about how that works as well. There's a lot of different hoops that you have to jump through. And jumping itself is not that difficult, but when you're presented with so many different options and you're not familiar with the process already, it just becomes a lot to learn all in one go. It can be very, very overwhelming. But ultimately, we're all gonna wanna be making that move up to development at some stage. The profits you can make, the systemization you can put in place, the amount of people you get to meet, and the size of your network grows massively. Developments are awesome, we all know that, and that's ultimately where I think pretty much all of us should be looking to get to. You can build cash flow, you can build huge sums of capital in one go, but do a little deal first. And it only has to be one. As long as you learned what you were doing and you were hands-on with the process and you figured out how it works. If you want to deliver a development site, make sure you've done at least one flip or one buy, refurb, refinance, and you're probably going to be able to work out the rest as you go along, assuming you have someone who can work with you. And if you don't have someone who can work with you, make sure you reach out to either myself, Anthony, or David. We would love to joint venture with you on your next development deal. Just let us know what you need and make sure that you have an awesome deal that you want to take through. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, turn on your bell notification so you never miss an upload, and please subscribe for next time.